So the topic that we'll be addressing over the next 5 weeks is, I've called it Parenting Tips from Torah and Chazal. That's what I've called it. And we're going to be touching upon a variety of topics. And I debated when I came to make this year, should it be geared at more teens or younger children? And I think that it's true across the board. And some of the examples that we'll bring and we'll discuss, and it's a less academic style class than I'm used to giving. It's going to be more kind of, I guess, exchange of ideas. It's be more, at least this one. Others will be more, maybe a little more structured, but this is going to be a little bit more of a theory that I've been working on. So with that in mind, and I'm going to try to apply it to all ages. And it's going to touch upon the fact that a fundamental belief of mine that first and foremost, what makes a person a good parent is what makes a person a good person. Just like I think the thing that makes a person a good spouse is what makes a good person a good person. And I think that's really kind of like the fundamental rule. I'll revisit it a couple of times, but I really think that I kind of wasn't completely truthful when I say parenting tips, because I think we all kind of we would love to hear tips like, oh, if it just I always like read through these little articles. You hear 8 tips, of this, and 7 things of this, and 7 habits of successful people. Okay, so if I just read, I'll be able to adopt these tips and these things, and then I'll be successful. I'll be a great parent. So obviously it doesn't BAYT work that way. So when I said tips, I hope this is more than tips. So my theory goes like this. I'm going to read the top. This is a quote from Rabbi Natan, which is a medrash, and it says the following: Ha'adam hu olam katan, ha'olam hu adam gadol, u'ma sheyesh bezeh, yesh bezeh. Man, although in Hebrew it would be Adam, which would be both man and woman, but for the sake of translation, man is a small world, the world is the large man. This is a concept that appears in the Midrash, is very prevalent in the world of Kabbalah. This concept that there's a parallel between the human world and the universe, and there's like onions and there's layers, and it's the same concepts that are true to the human psyche, are true to the universe at large, and the same rules that are true for the universe at large are true for the human psyche and the human life. And what exists in this exists in this. And based on that, I came up with a theory that says that if this is true, which I very much believe it is, then if we go back to the basics, go back to the fundamentals, go back to Bereshit, and we see how Hashem created the world. My hypothesis is that if we follow it carefully with an eye on education or on parenting, we could see the way in which Hashem created the world and eventually man. I think we might be able to detect kind of like certain ideas or perspectives on how to create human beings and how to approach raising a child. I think it might be true about how to reflect upon ourselves as well, and we'll be doing both. That is my thesis, and I'll now try to, not to prove it, but to show how I read the first chapter of Bereshit, and I think we can get some very important things out of it. So you can either follow from the Chumash, especially if you're interested in English, or from the page that I gave, in which I kind of separated the days in the way that we're going to be analyzing them. I think one of the reasons that this has merit is, without going into that length, just very, very short, very quickly, when Rashi and Ramban and others come and say, listen, the Psukim of Bereshit aren't really intending to tell us anything. This goes back to the shir we had 2 weeks ago, but that the Psukim aren't really interested in describing the actual act of creation. As I've said many times in the past, if anyone actually looks at the story of creation and thinks that this is an attempt to describe how the universe was created, it's probably the most pathetic creation story out there. Probably every ancient culture and religion out there has a much, much more creative, interesting creation story than we do. It's really not very descriptive. There aren't too many details, and therefore that's why many of the commentators, they spend most of the time not trying to describe the mechanics of creation, which Torah is not that interested in. Rather, it's describing the messages behind it, the philosophy, the moral teachings behind it. So I think there's merit to come and say that when we look at the story of creation, we see how man came to be. I think it's not a far-fetched idea to come and say, if you look here, we might be able to detect and pick up on a perspectives on how to create man, okay, or humans. Okay, so we're going to start. I'm just going to start reading, and I'll ask kind of like guiding questions that will help us maybe, no pun intended, illuminate what might be laying beneath the surface. Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz, ve'haaretz hayta tohu vavohu b'choshech al pnei tehom, v'ruach Elohim merachefet al pnei hamayim. So this, I think there is what to discuss here, but there's a lot to cover if you want to cover the whole parak in a short period of time. So I'm just going to jump. I'm going to do something which we're just going to jump to Pasuk Gimel. We're just going to assume that this is an introduction, that A, God existed, and B, there was chaos first. That's right now. Maybe if at the end we'll revisit it and we'll see what might be hiding in there. But I want to actually go to see what Hashem is doing. Okay. I'm going to read the three psukim, and again, let's try to have an eye on. Let's assume that is hiding in here a message about how to approach education. Okay, and we'll read it and tell me what strikes you, what comes to mind. Vayomer Elohim yehi or vayhi or, vayar Elohim et haor ki tov, vayavdel Elohim ben haor uben hachoshech. ויקרא אלוהים לאור יום ולחושך קר הלילה ויערב ויבוקר יום אחד. Maybe let's start by asking some questions. What in the text doesn't make so much sense? It's always good to start with questions. ויאמר אלוהים יהי אור ויהי אור וירא אלוהים את האור כי טוב ויבדל אלוהים בין האור ובין החושך ויקרא אלוהים לאור יום ולחושך קר הלילה. Anything seem here odd or strange in the phrasing? Anything here seem unnecessary, superfluous?
It says, "Vayavdel bein ha'or bein ha'choshech." It seems to be out of place.
Right. Why? Because it could just say.
Well, we already told us that there's or.
Right. It's but he says it. Now I'd add to that. Yeah.
Every morning we say like but I always say choshech, no?
Okay.
It's the same. Like no, you said or choshech.
Right.
So something is libro is from nothing. Litzor is from something that is already exists.
Okay, so over here it says vayavdel ben haor uben hachoshech, and you're saying that we say it says uvorech choshech or yotzer or vorech choshech.
Yotzer or
uvorech choshech. Okay.
This is afterwards. This is already assuming that the choshech was created.
Right, but it doesn't say what he's saying is it doesn't say that he created the choshech.
Right.
It just says that he created or, which seems to me that and by definition, because he created light, there was darkness.
We don't understand what it could be for light and darkness to be mixed together, so they could be separated.
Okay, beseder. So I think that the thing that strikes me as odd is there seemed to be, I think, possibly an unnecessary emphasis on the word
light.
Or.
Yeah.
Right? Meaning, or is the subject here, or the object, whatever. So, yehi or vayhi or. Later on, for instance, we'll see that when Hashem says to do something, what does it say when it actually happens? If you look, let's say, in Pasuk Zayin, vayhi chen. If you look in Pasuk Tet, vayhi chen. Pasuk Yud Aleph, vayhi chen. It says, and it was. Whereas over here, it says, v'yom Elohim yehi or, vayhi or. Then it goes on to say, v'yar Elohim et ha'or, כי טוב, ויבדל אלוהים בין האור ובין החושך, ויקרא אלוהים לאור יום. It seems to be there's really big emphasis on the word light. And the question is why? And my first question is why. Second question is there any kind of gradation here? Is there any kind of development? So I would suggest that yes, I think that there is a development. So I think if you look in Pasuk Gimel, you have that light existed, right? Hashem said there should be light, and light existed. That's stage A. Stage B, Vayar Elohim et ha'or ki tov. Strange. Hashem created it. Now Hashem saw the light that it's good. What does that sentence give us? Meaning, what would there be something missing if that pasuk wasn't there? Think about it. Let's think about it. V'yomer Elohim yi'or v'yi'or. V'yavdel Elohim ben or v'ben hachoshech. Is something missing? Obviously, something's missing. But what did that pasuk add? Okay, so we have that light exists, and then we have the fact that there needs to be a second stage of Hashem recognizing, or we being told that Hashem ki'ilu stopped and said, wait, okay, I created it, now let me recognize it for what it is. Let me, okay?
And could it not be good? I mean, if Hashem created it,
right?
So that free will is there.
Right. Could it not be good? So what is it trying to add? And it says Vayavdel Elohim, and then he differentiates it between the light and the darkness, and then Vayikra Elohim la'or yom. And again, if you're looking for the pshat, what does that mean? Hashem called out, said, "Hey, light, you're good." What does this add? So we have 4 stages here. You have that light exists. You have a recognition that the light equals good. You have a distinction being made between the light and the dark, meaning, and if light is good, and you're not differentiating between light and dark, then you're saying you're differentiating between
good and evil.
Good and bad.
Yeah.
Let's stick with bad for now.
Okay.
Good and bad. Okay.
Float. I don't know why good and evil.
No. Let's start with good and bad.
Yeah.
And then you have that Hashem calls the light day. Understand? Is it light or is it day? He's taking till now we had light, and now he's going to call Kala Yom. He's now giving the light. He's using it for something else. He's now transferring this term Or into the word day. Okay, so you might be thinking, okay, interesting read, but what does this have to do with education? So I think, and this, and listen, at the end you might say, Spitz, it just sounds like you want to give your educational theories and push it into the psukim. Maybe, but
clarify which Rabbi Spitz.
What? A disclaimer at the beginning of the video. Disclaimer.
But your name not always been Yair, if I understand it right. First 8 days, or 7 days, let's say this way, you were without name. You were just a boy.
You were just a
boy.
Who?
Before you were
a
given
child. You in this case, okay? And the 8 days, this boy called Yair.
Okay.
Yair Reuven, if I may.
Right. Sure.
Okay. So the same, like I can call something like by A.
Okay.
And at some point,
Good.
I just.
Okay, good. So that's going to take us in the direction. So I would posit that Or, meaning if you had to come and say, if you had to transfer, Or is the beginning, right? Meaning the beginning of creation. Everything starts from O. And Hashem identifies very early on, what is O? What is it? It's Tov. The beginning of everything is Tov, is goodness. That's where it all starts. Okay? It all starts from goodness. First, we have to recognize, the recognition comes second. First, the fact that the first thing that exists when we come to talk about education, when we come to talk about life, is that it is. Life is, and there's goodness. Then, first it is even before we recognize it. Second stage is we need to recognize that there is, first and foremost, there is goodness in the person, in life, in us, whatever. It's all the same. It really is all the same. I'll get to that in a minute. And then it comes to understanding that life is about, the world and life is about making a distinction between what is good and what is not good. That is a fundamental. And then comes a stage which is that you need to also communicate it. Meaning, look at this. Pasuk Gimel Vayomer. Pasuk Hey Vaikra. Pasuk Hey Kara. We're going to see that throughout the story of creation. This big emphasis on Vayomer, Hashem, Vaikra, Kara, communication. So first comes just the fact that it is, that goodness is. Second comes that we have to recognize and admit to ourselves. And I'll translate this more to practical things in a moment. And to say it, and to call out, say, this is good, you are good, humans are good, life is good, you have goodness in you. And the fact that one of the fundamentals is to give a child, and first and foremost ourselves, and also to our students, our children, the ability that one of the fundamental things is A, they are good, there is good, and they are good, and two, that life is about, one of the fundamental things it's about is differentiating between what is good and what is not good. So I'll give you an application, an example of how I see an application of this. And I think as we go through the days, you'll see that this idea becomes more feasible of a reading. If I were to I think the process that I'm trying to detect here is life. Life is good. See it as good. Call it good. And then also it will spread because or it becomes yum. It spreads. So I think that all of us know, especially when you talk about teenagers, but even younger ages, that a lot of times what we encounter, also with adults, but definitely with teenagers and also with younger kids, that there is a cynicism or there's a feeling that things are bad and things are negative. And that there's something about that people a lot of times feed onto. Now it's easy to come and say, always talk to your kids about that they can look at everything in a good way and there's goodness, but really it starts from the fact, and this goes true to everything we're going to say, that if you are not that way, if we are not that way, it is meaningless. Meaning if our children see us and hear us speaking negatively about things, I'm not talking about lashon hara even, I'm stam. If we are always complaining about life, about work, about other people, if we're complaining about the shul, about the rabbi, about the school, about the teachers, about the principal, about the politics, about the prime minister, if they continuously hear us with a negative attitude towards life, no matter what we tell them and what they hear, they will not believe in goodness. They will not believe that they are good. They will believe that things are bad and they will look for bad around them and they will view the world through that lens. Now it's not just a tip here. Okay, let's change the way we speak. It's our own outlook. Okay? So first of all is a recognition that everything is based on a positive approach, a positive outlook, because the world is good, because Hashem created the world and there's a fundamental understanding that the world is good and there's goodness, and that is the basis of everything. And if I behave that way and I reflect that, then when I also use those words and that terminology with my children, they will buy into it. They will feel the goodness. They will view the world through that lens, because that's the way I view the world. That's the way I speak about the world. So as I said before, the first and foremost that makes a good parent is a good person. So that is stage one. Life is good. See it as good. Call it good. Use words, positive words, and then it will spread. Give a few examples. Don't say, just one second, I'll give an example of how with little kids, and I'll give an example with older kids. With little kids, how we, and no one does this on purpose. When we use the words good boy, okay, and good girl, we usually don't say bad boy, okay? Or we sometimes will say don't be a bad boy, okay? Or you're not a bad, you're not a bad boy, or that's what bad boys do. Probably most people don't say that, but probably when kids, younger kids, when they do certain things that we see to be favorable, we say good boy. Now that sounds nice, but I don't think it is, because what that does is it says it's not that you are good. It's saying that if you do certain things, you're good. But if you don't do them, then you're not good. So I would say like this, and I'm going to use a few of these later on. Don't say good boy, good girl as a response to behavior. Say good job. There's a difference between what you are and what you do. There's a very big difference, and it's very important for kids to understand that we can make a difference, we can differentiate between who they are and what they do. Because as we're going to see later on, there's a lot of things that they do really without intending, because they can't control it. There's a lot of the things going on, but we need them to believe that they are good, period, regardless of how they behave. So don't say good boy, good girl as a response to behavior. To response to behavior, you say good job, good job, or say good job. When would you say good boy, good girl? All the time.
It's just all around it.
All the time. Not connected to anything.
Yeah.
You're a good boy, period. Not connected to anything. Not in response to a behavior, not as a reward, just period, to reinforce goodness. So, for instance, an older child, don't say or this would play into a translation of this would be, don't say, you keep on doing this. We've spoken about this before, that you shouldn't be doing this. That reinforces a self-image of, this is what I'm doing and I've done before, this is what I am. Say, this isn't like you. You know better. Those are that is positive terminology that says, this isn't like you because you are good. So the behavior, which is a negative behavior, this does not reflect who you are. This is just what you've been doing. But this isn't like you. And I'm reinforcing that you are good. So this isn't like you. Or you know better. Or things, if they're a little bit older, and you can actually have a conversation, things like, how are you going to do it differently next time? Or when you pass the anger stage, which we'll get to later. How are you going to not make the same mistake again? How are you going to make sure this doesn't happen to you? In which we assume that he's not going to do it again. And he knows that we assume he's not going to do it again. This would be just a few examples of how you reinforce your perspective of your child as being good. By the way, this would be true for adults as well. This would be true for the way we reflect it ourselves also. But we'll leave that for a different time. Right now we're talking about education. But it's all the same. Okay, so that would be stage one. Or good. Now, I don't like just to leave it. That's why I want to bring some practical examples. There could be a lot more. But because sometimes you hear the ideas, that sounds so nice. But, okay, so now we're going to move on. Yes?
How do we explain why Choshech was called Laila? So using the theory, so we have to call or good. So we're saying that Choshech is what?
Choshech is bad.
But it's not a bad boy. Choshech is just a bad...
Choshech is if we say that Choshech is just the absence of light.
Unless we assume that Choshech is not bad. We're not saying, this seems to be saying or is good and Choshech is not. Maybe both of them.
So right, that's right. Maybe. Listen, when we get to the 6th day, if we reach there this week, then we see, we say Tov Me'od. So Chazal say Tov Me'od is Yetzer Hara. So maybe that does play into it. Maybe it does play into it. I think it does. But if we reach Yom HaShishi...
Choshech has to be a bad thing.
What? Not necessarily.
Similar to what you're saying. It doesn't have to be a bad thing, Choshech.
Not necessarily. Okay. We're in day 2. Okay? And I think it's important the fact that the decisive way in which it says Yair Vayvoker Yom Echad, meaning this is rule number 1. Meaning it's important to, without getting into discussion, the days, not days, I'm saying the fact that it makes an effort to come and say Yom Echad, that's it. That is rule number 1. Be good. Believe in good, reinforce good in the way you look at the world, in the terminology you use, in how you, in thinking, in what I say to my child, what will this do to how he sees himself as being good, and the world being good, and life being good and positive. And that is the basis of everything. Second day. Vayomer Elohim yehi rakia betoch hamayim v'hi mavdil ben mayim lamayim. So Hashem said there shall be a rakia. I'm not sure, how does it translate it over there?
Firmament.
A firmament. Well, that makes it a lot clearer.
Yeah, so
right. Betoch hamayim, okay, inside the water. V'hi mavdil, and it will differentiate between the water and water. Okay. Vayas Elohim et harakia. Hashem made the firmament. Vayavdel, and He separated between the water which is above the firmament and between the water that's below the firmament. Vayichen, and it was so. Vayikra Elohim larakia shamayim ve'erev v'voker yom sheni. Okay. So what's happening here? Okay. So let's just what did Hashem do here? Did He create something here? He separated two existing things. Now, it's interesting. There's a very important phrase that appeared in the first day that does not appear in the second day. What is it?
Being good.
Very good. Excellent. Right? It does. Look, in the first day, it says in Pasuk Dalad Kitov. Jump forward. Look at Pasuk Yud. When it gets to the third day, it says Kitov. Look at Pasuk Yud Bet, the third day, right? It says Kitov again, Pa'amayim Kitov, right, on Tuesday. Look at the fourth day. If you look on Pasuk Yud Chet, it says Ki Tov. Look at the 5th day. Pasuk Kaf Aleph says Ki Tov. Look at the 6th day.
Oh, God.
It says 6th day. First it says Ki Tov about the animals, and it says, the only day it doesn't say Ki Tov is the 2nd day.
That's why people don't get married.
On Monday? I don't know, but it's interesting, right? I don't know. I never noticed it until I never noticed it. Any
It's about
ideas?
separating the same one from the
What?
It's separating the same thing as opposed to light and dark.
It's not separating two different things. It's separating two things that are the same.
Is
Therefore,
this about machlokas?
what?
It's about machlokas. Like, is this about the fight between the waters, and it's not a good thing?
We're going to try to stay out of midrash.
Okay.
We're going to try to stay out of midrash. Not because I have an issue with midrash, but not when we're trying to read the psukim with this eye. So I think because
Rashi has a Pashup shot. Rashi says
what does he say?
that the Mayim is not finished until day number 3.
It's not finished till day number 3, because only then do they separate land from waters.
Yeah,
Even though I don't know if that fits, because it says there's two, because there's the waters which is above that. Meaning, 2nd day differentiate between the waters above the firm, and then the whole world is still covered. So
Separating into oceans.
okay, beseder. Okay, beseder. So I would say, with an eye to education, okay, to come and try to say, look, that distinguishing or making differentiations is not just always between good and bad, good and evil, between what is always right and what is necessarily always wrong. Because the world is also filled with choices that are not necessarily an issue of good and bad. Sometimes it's choices between good and good, or just life is filled with choices. And it's not always so clear cut. It's not always clear cut. It's not always an issue of choosing between good and bad. There are a lot of things that aren't a question of right and wrong, like or and choshech, which is pretty. That's it. Rather, questioning of, because what's being distinguished here? It's both water. It's the exact same thing. Just some of the water belongs. They're both good. Okay, they're both good. But it's just saying like this water needs to be over here, and this one needs to be over here. It's recognizing that sometimes all the options could be okay, but it's just a matter of placement and timing. And I think when you come, especially with younger kids, but not only, that teaching them how to choose is very, very difficult, because life is one of the most fundamental things in life is, free will, is choice, and making smart choices. It's a phrase we always use, smart choices. And we always tell the kids, it's kind of become one of those catchphrases, was this a smart choice to make? That kind of thing that become one of these catchphrases. There's nothing wrong with it. So I think it's a good catchphrase. But how do we expect our kids to go from making bad choices to making smart choices, good choices? So I would posit that this is coming and saying, or that we could draw from this, that time needs to be set out, or we need to be conscious of the fact that we need to teach our children how to make choices. Not just wait until they make a mistake and say, okay, this was good, this was bad. I'd almost say allow them to develop choice muscles. Meaning, let them practice choosing in places where the stakes aren't so high. Okay, where the two options are not necessarily right or wrong. Where there's flexibility, because it's not that this water, the distinction here is not being made between good and bad. This is water and this is water. Just this one's place is up over here, and this one's place is down over here. I'll give an example. This would be more for teenagers. I had recently a long conversation with a parent about should they not allow their kids to spend their money however they like on junk. I'm not talking about dangerous things, God forbid. Just waste the money away on nonsense. Things like how to spend their money. There's actually one I like. When to do their homework. I'll give you. I had once a student who told me that their parent, that their mother, would insist with them continuously that the way in which they're spreading their margarine on the toast was wrong, because the parent had obviously I'm going to take a guess, an undiagnosed mild case of OCD, okay, and felt the need, what? Felt the need to say, that's not the way you do it, because it's not reaching, I will admit that I'm very particular about how I spread my margarine. But I hold myself back not to it drives my wife crazy, because she knows that if she doesn't butter my thing all the way, I will say thank you, I'll take it, and then behind her back I'll go and I'll spread it to the edges of the toast. But big deal. Let the kid, meaning if every single thing the child is told, also things that are not right and wrong, and I'm sure we all do this. We do it to our spouses, probably to some degree. We definitely do it to our children, where just the fact that we have authority, we always automatically we tell them what to do. Also, when it is absolutely not a question of right and wrong, or good and evil, or halachically permissible and unpermissible. Why? Let the kid choose. Or say to the kid, what do you prefer to do your homework, now or later? And especially if the kid is a little bit older, let him make the mistake. Let him learn on his own. Well, believe me, if you do it, if you wait till later, you'll fall asleep and you'll fall behind. Fine, let them do that, and let them learn. Let them develop their own muscles of choosing, their choice muscles. What food to eat, what games to play, even what friends to have. And a little more complicated.
Yeah, with limits.
A little, yes, of course. Because how do we expect them to make smart choices when it comes to the real things if they haven't had a chance to practice? I think it's like a muscle, and I think maybe the reason the man comes saying, look, it's not always so clear cut. Like there's light and dark, that's easy. No, there's a water which is. It's always interesting because without going into the question of firmament and how the ancient world was seen. Meaning, what's the distance between the water that's above the rakia and the water that's below the rakia? What's the actual distance between them?
Are they not touching almost?
Who knows? Meaning they might just be, a molecule apart. But still, call this up, call this down. Differentiate. So it's not necessarily so clear cut, but and fine, because there are choices that aren't clear cut, that are not good and bad. Hold yourself back. Allow your children, give them that space and that room to make choices.
Showing them how to do pros and cons lists and things.
Yeah. If you're lucky, and your kids will trust you enough to ask you advice, about these things that are not big life decisions. Allow them to develop the skill of making choices. And look for those opportunities. They could be anything from simple things as, what game do you want to play, or where do you want to go to eat, or you have, not less than 45 minutes ago did I say to my son, you have two choices. You can either fall asleep on my lap while I eat, or you can go lie down on the couch. I could have just said, go to the couch, or sit here. But neither one made that big of a difference. He was very tired. He wanted me to take him upstairs, young kid, okay? And I couldn't do that. When I said, you have two choices. Choose this or this.
It's empowering as well.
What?
It's empowering.
Yes. We'll get to that. It's definitely empowering. And he kvetched for about 5 seconds, and he said, I want to sit on you. Fantastic. But present them with their choices. Here's an idea. Do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? Do you want to go there? Do you want to go there? Do you want to do homework now? Do you want to do homework later? Do you want to go on the Shabbaton? Whatever it is. Let them get used to hearing that you are giving them choices and believe in their ability to make choices.
We're saying that this is specifically when it's not good versus bad.
Yes.
The question is, should we not also give them choices to choose between good and bad?
Well, yes. I think that's later on. I think that's when we come to the fourth day.
And will giving them.
I think that this is more in a younger age when it's much safer, where they need to really develop that basic belief in their ability to make just stam choices, that something is within their control, and that they, when they come to big questions and big, they will already intuitively feel that they can make a choice.
What's the danger otherwise?
What's the danger?
Saying the danger that if we don't empower them with choices, that they're just going to do whatever they're told.
I think there's two dangers. One is that they will have very big difficulty becoming independent. Meaning, I'd say, I'm not sure which one is worse. Worst case scenario number one is that they lack the confidence to make independent choices, and will always be looking towards someone else to make the decisions for them. Anything from a parent, best case scenario, a parent, but worst case scenario, peers. Some other figure, authority figure, or someone who has some kind of control, either physical, mental, emotional authority over them, dictating for them and driving their decisions, because they don't have the confidence and they don't have the ability to make a choice based on, this is what I want to do. So that's worst case scenario number one, is they are looking for someone else to make the decision for them. Worst case scenario number two would be when they suddenly realize, well, no choice is being left up to me, and I'm sick and tired of it, and therefore I'm going to just break all of the, all these authoritative, all these constructs and all these authority figures around me that have been telling me my whole life what to do. Well, the heck with them. I'm not listening to anyone anymore. So that's worst case scenario number one and worst case scenario number two. Both of them are bad.
But if we are not going to extreme, let's say that, we are not giving them choices during the, growing up. But let's say, not the worst case scenario, the regular one, the mainstream of this decision not to give them choices, what it would be then. Okay, let's not go to.
So I think that a child will develop in a something will be lacking in the child's and teenagers and eventually the adult's life. Meaning, just I think it's all the same. Meaning, when an adult, also that we know adults who have difficulty making choices, have difficulty. I had a student last year who fantastic, strong student, motivated student, really all around great student, great kid. Who wanted to make a decision about which yeshiva to go to in Israel, and he got accepted to two fantastic yeshivot. I mean, he got accepted to basically every yeshiva. He had yeshivas literally chasing him, calling him up, nudging him to try to convince him to come to them. And he narrowed it down to two. And until a week before he got on the plane, he had not made up his mind which one to go to. He could not make up his mind. And he spent hours upon hours upon hours asking it. He could not make up his mind. He was lucky that both places wanted him and said, no matter when you come, we'll accept you. He could not make up his mind. And he was paralyzed by it. I told him, I said to him, what are you going to do when it's time to get married? Meaning, do we not know people who obsess and obsess and obsess with the decision, and it paralyzes them about in their careers, in their life? And now, not to come and say that I can say, well, if you give your kid a choice what to do with his money, then that's it. He'll be super. His whole life will be confident. Of course, it's not that simplistic.
The nature part as well as in
yes, it's not that simplistic. But I think it's connected in creating a certain kind of personality. One that. Okay. Let's try to finish. Let's try to do day 3, and with that, I think we're going to end for today, and we'll see how they kind of build on each other. Okay, so the third day. This is also very important, very connected to the second day. We have to do the third day if we did the second day. The water shall gather to one place, and the land will be revealed, will be seen. Again, at the end, when we get to the very end, after we finish the whole chapter, we're going to go back and see what were the 2 or 3 themes that have gone through the entire parak. But we'll see that afterwards. Hashem called the land earth, let's say. And the water area he called oceans. So let's stop here for a second, okay? So what did Hashem do here? What was actually done here? What is the next stage of the creation of the world? The first stage was goodness, and everything had to do with creating good, recognizing good, and allowing good to spread. The second was that differentiating between not only good and bad, but also differentiating things that are in front of you, be able to differentiate, to make choices about them. And now the third thing, what's the third stage of creation?
Sounds like he's removing the water to reveal the land that's there.
Right. So something that's already there, but is now being allowed to be revealed. But even simpler, before that, what's being done here? there's a separation. The word separation is being used, but we now have two areas in two areas in the world. We have the area which is water, okay, which is fluid. And we have one area which is what's opposite of fluid? Solid. Okay. And from that, and what happens once they have solid ground? What happens next? I won't read the whole psukim. What happens now that there's solid ground? What can happen? Growth. Okay. Now it's interesting. Only once you have a distinction between the firm ground where things can grow and the earth, suddenly only now once this stage also happens where there's one area which is stable and constant and not moving, okay, earth, and versus an area which is fluid and water and always changing, suddenly now this enables growth. So I think what I would take from this is after we've had day 1 and day 2 comes the fact that it's not the world doesn't hefker, just make any choices that you want. There also needs to be firmness. There also needs to be, in order for there to be growth, there's an area where things are fluid called yam, where it's a little chaotic and there's a lot of options and things are always changing and there's always possibility there. But there's also an area of where things are stable and things don't change. Those are called rules. Those are called rules. And first of all, the first stage of this is that there need to be rules. There needs to be an area where there isn't choice. There needs to be, because if not that, if everything is just choice, and we live in a day and age where we see some of these phenomena, where kids have endless possibilities, or adults have endless possibilities, and this overflow of possibility is one which people are just kind of like flying in the wind, and there's nothing to concrete them. Again, it's true to adults, it's true to teenagers, it's definitely true to kids. There needs to be an area which is solid, which is stable, which is not changing. And it's interesting when Hashem, it's up to now, none of all the days, if you look at Pasuk Yud Aleph, look how specific it gets. V'yomer Elohim, tadshe haaretz, deshe esev, mazriya zera, etz pri yoseh pri lemino, asher zara bo al haaretz. So it's actually, if you look at the Mefashim, they get into a long discussion. What is all this detail and what does each word mean and how does it fit together? But not only that, actually, as it says, it also goes to the next pasuk to say, and don't wait, this is what happened. But what?
It's very repetitive.
It's very repetitive. There are slight changes, which are actually important, but we're not going to get into it now. But it seems like, now that there's growth happening based on this stability, it gets like, I would almost say, if I'm assuming that it's trying to give us a message about education, about how to raise children, it's that the rules need to be very well defined. Meaning, once Hashem comes to this stage where things are growing and it's trying to give us this idea of life and progress and advancement of life will happen only when there's some kind of stability and something which is solid, it needs to be very, very specific. It needs to be very, very clear. It needs to be very clearly communicated because it doesn't just say Vayichen. The pasuk is not happy enough with just saying Vayichen. It goes to make sure to tell you this exactly what happened. It can just say Vayichen, and it happened. It doesn't say, and it doesn't say again, and then there was light. It just says Vayichen. Just say Vayichen. But it says, and it goes, but it says to make sure that it actually followed the rules. Rules need to be had. And rules need to be clear, and rules need to be actual rules. And this is not connected to the text. This is my little tidbit. Right? Say, Chazal say, and later on, when in the other classes, we'll see some of what Chazal say explicitly about chinuch. But they say, your hen shelcha yeh hen, v'lav shelcha yeh lav. This is a general rule life. When you say yes, it should mean yes, and when you say no, it should be no. And again, this is not from the psukim. This is really just my 2 cents. And my rule of thumb that I try to follow is, because I want my yes to be absolute yes, and not to have to change my mind. And I want my no to be an absolute no that does not necessitate me changing my mind. Therefore, going back to the first rule of goodness, my assumption is always say yes unless there's a reason to say no. Because life is good. And everything's good. And you're good. And I'm good. And you want to have a good perspective on life. I want to have a positive approach. So, rule of thumb, this is not from the Psukim. This is like my 2 cents. That the default is yes. Unless there's an actual reason to say no. And only very rarely is my laziness a good enough reason to say no. Like only in extreme cases is laziness good enough to say no. But if you think how often we say no as an automatic response, and I also think that's connected to the first idea, which is, do our kids and the people around us hear the word? What is the automatic thing that comes out of our mouth? Are they accustomed to hearing yes, or are they accustomed to hearing no? But it also goes to the first issue of conveying and emanating a feeling of positivity and goodness, but also because if you tend to say yes more and no less, there's a better chance of sticking to your no's and sticking to your yeses. Okay, so that's Thursday. I'll add in one more thing, because this is going to be a shout out to one of the things we're going to be doing probably in 2 weeks, which is that it ties in very closely to discipline, to the whole question of discipline, and we're going to have 2 sessions about discipline. One perspective of discipline in Tanakh, and Sachar v'Onesh and discipline in Tanakh, with kids specifically, and we're going to do one from Chazal as well about discipline. But the idea here being that rules are needed. Without rules, then choice becomes chaos. Okay? Meaning there needs to be an area which is solid and not up to choice, and it needs to be clear what that is. And it needs to be, but that only works if there's also another area which is yam, which is water, which is an area which is clear that you have choice, and it is your area, and I will not intervene in it, even if I think you might be doing something which isn't the best. I will let you choose. I will let you figure it out on your own. And if then that makes it makes the area where there are rules, and makes it a lot easier and a lot clearer to the child or to the teenager that it's not just that you're the authority telling what to do. Because look, there is an area. What am I going to put up the walls in my room? When am I going to go to sleep? Whatever. 100 other things. Yeah.
I think it's interesting the order. This is what I'm thinking is the previous day we looked at choice, and now we're looking at rules. I would almost think you want to first have rules, have the stability, and then open up to choice.
Think about a child's development. Think about age-wise. You don't have rules for a baby.
No.
You don't have rules. You don't have rules for a 2-year-old.
No.
But you do allow the 2-year-old to have choices, right? You do start talking the language of choice. Do you want more? Mm-hmm. Do you want to play with this?
You have rules. Don't put that in your mouth.
What?
There are rules.
Those are not. Okay. I hear what you're saying. Meaning, yes, but I don't say to the 2-year-old, don't put it in your mouth, expecting the 2-year-old or the 1-year-old to actually understand. We're expecting that the child exactly. Okay, I have a really big problem right now. My 10-month-old can now walk and likes to go to one of her favorite places to go, besides the stairs, knowing that we don't want her to go up, but much worse than the stairs, and I will, even though she can fall down the stairs, much worse, she goes to my Sfarim, and she likes to pull them all out and throw them on the floor, because she knows that whenever she does that, I will run to her. Yeah. Yes, I will get, and I'll say, no, don't do that, which of course she loves. Okay, so yes, we have rules for 1-year-olds, but they're not rules which we expect them to consciously follow. But we do. It's about choice. We'll show a baby 2 books or a toy, and they'll choose. So I think choice does come before rules.
But what about in a classroom? Wouldn't you say the first day the teacher comes in, it makes much more sense for them to come kind of across as the strict person and then back off and give the choice, then be the good guy?
Completely. But a school is not, regretfully, it's not a natural. It's not a natural education format.
But that's only because we get our children when they're babies.
No, I think it's because a classroom is a very superficial, not superficial, it's a very artificial education atmosphere. It was never meant to be that. No, it was
What
never
would
meant to
you
be that
say?
way. Because what we're doing, especially with younger kids, we're forcing them to go to some degree, especially the younger age, to go a little bit against their nature. It says we're going to sit in a room and we're going to, for 45 minutes, we're just going to use our brain, basically. And then you can run around like animals for 10 minutes. And then we're going to spend another 45 minutes just engaging your intellect.
That's what we just did.
And then,
10-minute break in between the two.
What? Yeah, but the difference is we're adults. And we'll get to that. The ratio between their emotions and their intellect. The younger they are, the less intellect plays a role in their. I think in high school, yeah, I think you're right. But I think the whole atmosphere of formal education is very artificial and does not correspond, especially at younger age, does not correspond to the natural emotional, psychological growth of children.
So what about this?
And I know, yes, I'm a principal of a high school. Yes, I know.
What about this rolling out of fuller day school for younger children? Does that not, based on what you say, not be the ideal thing? Maybe it's something we do because we have to go to work. So we
Well,
want
that's
to
what it is. It's really babysitting, isn't it?
But really,
No.
it's much better for your
What?
kids to be with you in a more open environment than to be in the regiment of school when they're 3.
Absolutely.
Possibly, yeah. Okay, so just to summarize, we have day 1, day 2, day 3. Day 1, the focus on goodness, positive language. First of all, our own positivity about ourselves and our life and reality, and using that language. Second is allowing for choice, developing the ability to make choices. And 3, rules that complement that area in life, choices versus rules, and that's it for now. Next week we'll see day 4, day 5, day 6, and Shabbat.